We've been working with NDC for years, working with the concept of NDC, what it means to the industry. We have a committee that works through it. And Jim Wells, I'm on the phone with him one day, and he says to me, have you ever heard of Tom Kershaw? I said, yeah, he's the Chief Product and Technology Officer at Travelport. He said, I heard him. He's really good. He's very knowledgeable on it. Let's see if we can get him for the symposium. Reached out to Tom, and Tom raised his hand and said, absolutely happy to join you. So all the way from California, I believe, Tom Kershaw, you're welcome to the stage.
Thanks for inviting me. Hello, everyone. Hope you can hear me okay. So I'm here to talk about NDC. You can imagine, like, it's bad enough to be after lunch, but to talk about NDC of all topics, like, I don't know what short straw I drew to have to do that. But so what I'm going to try to do is explain what NDC really means. And unfortunately, right now, it means something different than it did on March 30th. American Airlines took over the definition of NDC, so I think it's good to kind of go back and say, how do we get in this situation? What are we doing this for? And what does it all mean? So hopefully in 40 minutes or less, I will alleviate all questions and you'll fully understand the brilliance and greatness of NDC. So before we get to that, what is this all about? I mean, because NDC is part of an industry movement to modernize and to get a best-of-breed technology stack that I always say makes it look like the internet. So when we talk about travel and retail, there's three things that you need. You need simple automated search processes that an end traveler can find the trip they want as quickly as possible and get on with their lives. Looking for travel is not a destination in and of itself. It's a means to an end. So we need to think about simple search and automated search and shopping. We need to think about cross-sells and upsells. And by that I mean customization to that basic project. When we say cross-sell, what we mean is you've got a seat on a plane. There's special things that you want as a traveler or you as a corporate buyer want. We want to enable that. And we want servicing to be easy and touch-free. We want to proactively service that ticket, not force the user into something that's clunky. So what needs to happen? Simple. This is the easy part. Reinvent the entire search infrastructure of the travel industry. Develop post-booking tools that maintain a relationship between your traveler and your corporate policies after booking, because after booking, we kind of lose that traveler sometimes. And then finally, we need to build a data-driven servicing model. So that's all we got to do. It's easy. It'll be done on Tuesday. Once those three things are done, we're good. So this is happening anyway. And then in that background, along comes NDC. So what is it? I mean, we sometimes forget how we got here. So it's called New Distribution Capability. And by the way, that means I am ODC, Old Distribution Capability. So I'm willing to acknowledge that. But it's a standard, and I use the word loosely, was meant to be a way for how we could interact directly with the airline IT system. So take the .com experience that they've built and extend that to the agent of the corporate traveler. Simple concept. So instead of going through these aggregation functions, and I'll talk about what the aggregation functions did, let's develop a way, an API method to do that. It uses a standard called XML. You don't have to be a technologist for me to tell you. XML is the fax machine of APIs. It's a little not necessarily brand new. So the industry is moving towards all of that stuff. But it's meant to replace the current GDS system for providing itineraries. It's not meant to replace aggregation, right? It's a different model. So when we say, a lot of times with American people are saying, well, it's off the GDS. It's off of the traditional assembly mechanism, but it still is inside of aggregation with the same rules and the same things that you need before. So let's not think of it as competing with the GDS. And nothing drives me crazier than that concept, because we, the GDS and World Travel together, we have this under control. We know what we're going to do. And there's some reasons why we are where we are. So this was meant to be a standard. It's not really a standard, but it was meant to be a way to allow airlines to compete and to customize. So, okay, I get that propaganda version of what it is. What is it really? Well, it was launched in 2020. We started with Singapore Airlines and Qantas, so it's been out there in production for a couple of years now, and it will forever be associated with April 3rd, 2023, in many of in this room. It's not super popular with agencies, and the reason for it is that it's not fully functional. It doesn't really work yet, and there's still a bunch of things that we're working out. So we're in this a little before the various pieces are ready, especially OBTs and mid-office integration and all of those things. So, I get a mixed bag of comments from agencies. But some agencies will say to me, "You've had 13 years, how come you're not ready?" I'm like, well, because American just released their API a couple months ago. Then I'll have others that say, I don't want to book them anymore, I want to share shift away from them. Somewhere in the middle is the right answer to this. So I think I'll talk about what American is actually doing in a minute, but there are some reasons why this is a good thing. Migration is mostly stick, not carrot right now, and this is an important point. There's a bunch of incentives or reasons we're doing NDC that are still evolving. So it seems dysfunctional, it seems horrible, but it's early days, and what I'd ask all of you to do is be patient, and let's work together to get to the bigger picture on this stuff. So this is from IATA's technical specification of why NDC. This is why we did it as an industry. These are the benefits. And I would point to a couple of these. Product differentiation. Okay, airlines would like to be able to differentiate and compete for your business. That's usually a good thing. I'll talk about that in a minute. So there's a bunch of differentiation stuff that's supposed to be there. But all I see right now is the same old thing with a different price. So, but I can see why they'd want to do that. Ancillaries, allowing you to customize and have a menu so you don't have a one-size-fits-all version. You can set and you can add things and you can create your own travel experience. Seems like a good thing. And a lot of this stuff, dynamic pricing, that means cheaper. I'll take cheaper. So you're 3 for 3. Awesome. Great stuff. And all the other ones, just assume they're good too. So great. This is what IATA says. All right, now I'm going to go into the unsolicited, snarky opinion section and give them a report card on how are you doing. So, okay, airline industry, there you go. You got some room for improvement. I mean, maybe a little tutoring, a few detention hours, and we'll get you whipped back into shape. This stuff hasn't happened yet. The point is, there's good reason to do NDC, and if all the things on IATA's white paper were true, we'll be in a good spot, but we're still not there. This isn't surprising. It's not shocking. It doesn't make NDC bad. But right now, any rational person would not say, we've nailed ancillaries, we've got great product differentiation, and our prices are better. What they'll say is, I'm confused by this thing. So that's my view of where things are. That said, NDC is good. It is your friend. It needs love and hugs and attention. So think of it as a young child who sometimes acts up, but we have to, we can get them where they need to be. So there's some things I like about NDC. And here's the thing that we have to go back and remember. This is why airlines didn't like the old model. Is we take their product, and in getting it on that screen, on that Concur screen or Deem screen, wherever your traveler can see it, we had to do this. We had to take away the differentiation. And so they feel they're left with a product that they can't control, and they can't, Delta, American, and United have very different strategies, and they're offering very different products. Some are going after premium, some are going after corporate, some are going after different mixes of this. So this is not the right model for travel where everything looks the same. And the most common question I get from corporate travel managers is, can't you just make it look like it did before? And my response is always the same. Wouldn't it be hilarious if 15 years of effort and hundreds of billions of dollars spent, we ended up right back where we started? That's the most travel industry thing you could possibly do. And I don't want to do that. I want to do something totally different. So here's why I like it. And again, I'll warn you, it's going to be a bumpy ride to get to the NDC we want to get to. But as a technologist, there are things in travel that drive me kind of crazy. And some of them were mentioned in some of the earlier presentation. File-based PNRs that don't have all the data, that's not very good. Flat rate economic models where you're not paying for value, that's not good. One size fits all where every traveler and every corporation, everyone in this room gets the same thing, that's not good either. So, and there's 1,000 other things I hate about travel technology. I won't get to the other 990 till later. So done correctly, NDC will allow airlines to compete for your business with dynamic offers. So they can give you special pricing dynamically. They can tailor things to the traveler. They can compete for your business. And where I come from, having the 3 airlines actively competing for every booking, that benefits everyone in this room. It benefits all travelers. It benefits corporate travel managers. It benefits agencies. So we want to enable that. We're not there now, as per my report card, but we want to enable this competition because it can be a good thing if we do it right. But there are barriers. It's going to be a rocky road. There's a myth that NDC is about removing cost. It's not. It's about allowing airlines to compete and customize and personalize their offering. So we want to enable that, but the current system isn't set up to allow that. So we have to take responsibility, at least I do as a technology provider, to make those changes to allow you to use NDC just like everything else, but also get the benefits of increased airline competition. So all this means I have to change my technology, and so does everyone kind of in this room. We need to rethink kind of our technical approach. And the good news is, between World and Travelport, we've been working together for a long time. We have a really good sense of how we're going to make this work for you and get to a better spot. Though again, there may be a little turbulence on approaches, I would say. So here's the airlines that are out there now. And there's been a lot of talk about American, Air France, KL, United. Those are all live. They're live on our platform in the world today. And there's a whole bunch more that are coming. And I would caution you that while Americans are getting a lot of news, the one you want to pay attention to is United, because they're the ones who are doing some interesting things around dynamic pricing and tailoring that offer to the customer. And they're working a little more closely, I think, with the agency community to make it a little smoother of a process. But the news here is this is happening. And it's not going to go away. It's not going to disappear. It is going to proceed. And I think since we know inevitably that the NDC is going to be a big part of our ecosystem, it's on us to make it successful in a good way. And that's something that we very much understand. That said, I'm doing a lot of, it's all good, but. So this is an example of that. This is our NDC. Our salespeople use this to sell NDC, literally. Like, I look at this and I shake in terror. But I guess our salespeople want to say, listen, we have this roadmap to do all these things. But look at the line items. Free seats, bags, modify. That's not a nice to have part of travel. That is travel. And if every airline does it differently, and every airline has a different approach to these things, we can never be successful. So the lack of standardization and the lack of serviceability impacts all of our travelers. And when something goes wrong with our travelers, they blame all of us collectively. So we have to find a way to make all these differences and all these airline customizations into something you can fit on a screen this big, and you can do what you need to do on a screen that big. So there's real work that needs to happen. And this old way wasn't going to scale. And this is something that we realized and the world realized really early on, is this is the way NDC works. It's another integration. It's literally another connection. So instead of having everything through one common connection, you can have 3, 4, 10, 20, 50 different connections. So this model is not going to work. And what this means is the old GDS model also isn't going to work. And it's going to have to grow, and it's going to have to evolve into this. And what this means is supply independent services. So in our case, we had the choice of plumbing NDC into the GDS or building a brand new internet-based search model on top of the GDS. We went with the latter, right? And what that means is we can connecting in airlines, the GDS is just another supply source now. And so these functions, these are the functions you care about. How do I search and how do I book? How do I derive intelligence and data from this that I can feed into my corporate systems for ESG and everything else that I'm doing? How can I manage my costs and my policies more effectively? And how can I service all of this stuff? Because servicing is critical. So we look at it like this. And so that required us to build a new technology to be able to handle NDC. And here's some of the questions you have to ask yourself and why this is complicated and interesting. If you've got 10 different supply sources, what do you have to do? You have to figure out how to get all of those different sources onto a screen this big, because that's what a customer has. And for your travel agents, for your corporate travelers, how many times do you think they scroll down off the second screen in their OBT? And the answer to that's about 8%. We see it, we know what it is. So 92% of the times, what you put on that first screen, that's what's going to get booked. So you have to get it right. It's really important. And NDC makes it harder. Because one of the things I'll talk about in a second, 82% of inventory is duplicate between NDC and GDS. It's the same exact seat, sometimes with the exact same price. So in order for us to get the right stuff under that tiny screen, we have to deduplicate. We have to then score, say, for this traveler, what's the best option? And it becomes a lot more complicated when you've got stuff that looks the same. And I'll give you an example of why deduplication is difficult. What if you have two offers, same flight, with a $2 price difference and it's a $1,000 ticket? Is that a duplicate, or is it not a duplicate? What if NDC costs you twice as much to service with twice as long hold times that make your travelers angry? Is it a duplicate? I don't know. So the definition of what a duplicate is, or what the best option is, becomes a really, really important technical decision that you really have to have, a best-in-class search engine and a best-in-class travel agent to be able to really navigate. The other thing that's interesting is connection management. Now, this is where I'll lose some of you where it's highly technical, but let me just explain one thing. 15 different airlines connecting 15 different pipes. Some of them are returning results in 1 second. Some of them, Air Canada, are returning it in 13 seconds. Some of them, American Airlines, are taking 3 seconds. So how long do you wait? Do you wait for all of them to respond, and then you're putting that answer in front of the traveler 20 seconds later? Not a good experience, especially not on your mobile device. So we have to make decisions on when to cut off a search. Do I even call Air Canada for this search? Do I even call Singapore Airlines? There's a whole bunch of things you have to do in this multi-connection environment to be able to provide a good service and a good solution to your traveler. So that's kind of the technology behind it. The other thing that's happening is that shop is changing. And that technology has really changed the search process. Because business travelers, your travelers, most of them do what's called availability-led search. Hopefully some of you know what this means, but that means I want to know what the available options are, and then I'll price that after I determine. Because a lot of your travelers know where they want to go. They don't want to take a 3-hop solution to save $10, and they probably have airline relationships that they prefer. So business travel was always based on this availability-led model where the traveler had an idea of what they were trying to do, which is different. Now, looking at every single option, when your traveler wants to go on Delta and wants a direct flight and wants it to be in the morning, showing a bunch of stuff on Spirit with 6 connections at 4 in the morning ain't going to help. But we do in this industry, we calculate all these things in the old GDS model, and that costs money and it's wasteful. So this new model that we have to adopt this to the model that your travelers want to accomplish. Because NDC, as designed, is a fare-led search. It's not an availability-led search. So it's asking for prices for every possible connotation of how to get from Philadelphia to Atlanta. And that is generating a whole bunch of costs and a whole bunch of inefficiency that we have to figure out. So this old model, the way business travel works is not in the current NDC construct. Right? And this is a big gap that really has to be figured out. How can we make search look the same with a different technology stack from the airlines? The other thing that's happened is journey-based versus fare-led. So this rises in the OTA model, in the NDC model, you don't know where you want to go if you're on an OTA, or you may not care which airline you're on. Now, the NDC model has a different thing. Here's what the NDC model is based on. I'm the only airline in the world. That's the model it's based, literally, it's what it's based on. The NDC doesn't contemplate a world where you would choose anything other than American or anything other than United. Unfortunately, and I guess there's certain routes where that may be true, but that's not the way business travel works. So this idea of complete agnosticism, which is the OTA model, or complete monopoly travel situation, is not the way NDC works. So this is why the shopping process and the creation of itineraries needed to be rethunk in our industry. And we have to create a new model that takes us beyond ODC and NDC to new NDC, which is the new platform that we're trying to build directly with World and with others in the industry, with an eye towards standardization and functionality. So what does this mean technically? It means there's a new model where agencies have to assemble massive volumes of potential output. I'll talk about this in a minute. And many of these options are not really bookable. So how can we create the best option for your traveler, knowing that each of you have different policies. Your travelers have different preferences. They have different demographics, as we heard earlier. So one size fits all doesn't work anymore. And so we have to take the data that we have and the intelligence that we're building using things like AI to deliver the right itinerary to the right traveler at the right time. So here's evidence of this. Search, shop on our platform, and World is seeing the same thing on our joint platform. It's exploding. So the volume of search that I process today is literally almost 100% higher than what it was pre-pandemic, right? And we're not fully recovered as an industry yet. So think about that. And I see it's probably going to double again. These are real numbers from Travelport of the searches that we're seeing coming across our platform. So the amount of shop is exploding. Now, some of this is consumer trends. Some of it is pent-up demand for travel. Some of it is corporate approval processes. Some of this is the fact prices are still really high. Like a year ago, they were really, really high. So people are shopping more to see if they can find the right fare. So some of this is consumer-led, but most of it is supplier-led. Now, this is a technical chart. Don't bore you with what these calculations mean, but here's what I'll tell you. I have to look at 5 times more options to assemble that little screen than I did before, because so much coming into the pipeline is slightly differentiated. So, for example, since I see Delta's here, Delta filed something like 500,000 fares on a single route a few months ago. London to New York, 500,000 options. We really need that. So there's all this complexity coming into the system. Just slight differences, different fare classes, or this has a free bag, this doesn't have a free bag. Then there's the code share multiplier, where all my code shares create another version of all of this stuff. So the way these things are assembled has gotten complicated. NDC is going to create a doubling of stuff coming in, literally just times 2, because a lot of it is duplicate. It's exactly stuff we already had in a different channel with a slightly different price or a slightly different variation. And then on top of that, you've got ancillaries and all this special stuff on top of it. So the amount of data that we have to look at to be able to get that stuff on the screen in less than a second is exploding. And that creates both opportunities and challenges for the industry. So as a result of this, search technology is changing, and it's becoming more like the internet. But it's also not. Travel's got some unique things about it that I'll talk about in a minute. But there's a lot to come here. Our old technology was about assembling itineraries. Our new technology is about tying that itinerary to the traveler accurately, effectively, and immediate. It's about price was important, but it wasn't as important as schedule. Now it's going to be about speed, and it's going to be about machine learning and intelligence. And the technical barrier used to be connecting to the airlines was not the easiest thing in the world. It is becoming easier because there is a standard, and that standard still has some work to do, and yes, it's not really a standard yet, but connecting to the airlines won't be the thing that drives success for World or for us or for you as travel managers. It's accuracy, it's personalization, and it's providing a product that keeps your subscribers in channel, in tool all the time. So they have no reason to ever go out of the corporate policy and the corporate system that we built for them. That's a real challenge, and it's something that we absolutely have to meet. Okay, now this is where I take a little bit of a break and go, I call this, whatever, integration duplicate offers. What the name of this slide should be is woefully premature conclusions. Because I always tell people, everyone wants to talk about American and what happened and what's going on in the data, what are you seeing? And here's what I would say. It's been 3 weeks, okay? Please don't draw conclusions that we know everything just yet, or that we have even figured this out, because I will tell you, American hasn't figured this out. But also, as I think some of the earlier speakers said, they're not just a bunch of insane people doing crazy stuff. There's logic behind this. But we see this data. We've been live with American since September. We see all the data, we analyze it, we've got reports, we've shared those reports with World, and really, we want to together be data-driven in our decisions, not gut instinct or I read a Focusrite article and this is what I'm going to do, that kind of thing. I want to be able to look at this data and make the right decision, because it's really tempting to stop everything and go work only on American Airlines and forget about the 95% of the other trips you're booking that are working fine. We have to continue to develop tools for all of your travelers, not just this corner case. All right, that said, here's the deal. 72% of what we see is complete duplication. It's the exact same fare, the exact same seat, the exact same flight. So the idea that there's all this unique stuff in the NDC channel just isn't true. Now there is, so both extreme conclusions are wrong, as I want to tell you. Is the idea you can just ignore it, don't worry, they're this tiny airline that no one ever uses them. That's not true. American Airlines is a big deal, and we have to address it. The idea that they're horrible and we should just turn them off, that's also not true. So in the middle, there lies some reality. But a lot of this is duplicate. And so it makes it incumbent on World as your provider and their technology behind them has to pick the right one when they look really, really similar, and getting it right is critical. So 72% of those are unique. So what about the 28 that are not unique? There's really two sets of routes. Now these are routes. There's route duplication and there's price duplication. In the routes, there's only two things that are not available currently in the NDC channel. One is a basic economy fare, which most of us don't book. Most corporate travel managers block basic economy for a whole bunch of reasons. So we don't have to worry about that part. There's a second non-refundable main cabin fare that is also unique to NDC. So so traditional EDIFACT has a non-refundable economy, non-refundable main cabin, and so does NDC. Now NDC's is different because they have a free bag. So there's a free bag version you can only get in NDC. That version costs on average $93 more than the non-free bag one, which you should immediately say, it costs $50 to take the bag. Why would I possibly book that ridiculous fare? But that's the kind of weird noise that we see in the system right now. So from a duplication perspective, almost everything is available in both channels. So it's not the case that what is in NDC is some unique thing, and there's like a fortune cookie and a bottle of seltzer on the seat, and the flight attendants are nicer. It's not true. It's mostly the same content, and so again, that creates some real challenges from a what is a duplication perspective. But that said, here are the actuals, and I'll give you some broad generalities. Yes, it is true that most of this is leisure focused today, and they have left corporate out. And I've talked to American extensively around this, and they haven't said this flat out, but I'll tell you why corporate's not in there right now, because it's harder. It's harder to do because you've got OBT integrations, and you've got mid-office integrations, you've got corporate controls. There's this crazy thing called approvals that you don't have in leisure. But approvals means you have to do book and hold, which is not in the current American Airlines API. And I won't even talk about Concur because I want to be nice on a Friday. So there are a lot of challenges to corporate. So it is true, it is certainly true, that most of this is leisure, and I'll talk about why in a minute. But there are some things here that do affect you, though they're leisure-ish, that they do affect corporate travel. The biggest fare difference, and these are all fare differences. Oh, I should just back up for a second. Right now, they only have US and Canada. They were supposed to put Mexico and the Caribbean, a very common business destination. They were supposed to put that in on Monday, but they delayed it by a week. It's supposed to be next week. So they haven't even done international or anything with codeshare. Almost everything is single hop domestic in Canada today. But here's some things that jump out at you. The biggest difference, the single biggest cost difference, and it's substantial, it's in the 20-25% range, is first class. Now some of you are saying, we don't book first class. Part of that is Y-and-Up. So Y-and-Up, as you know, is a Y fare. It's a Y fare that you buy that you get an automatic upgrade. That is used in corporate travel quite a bit. And refundable economy, refundable main. Those are the areas where we do see substantial differences. So I guess my conclusion is, while this is not earth-shattering or a revolution that will, the end traveler stop walking around going, hey, well, that NDC is working out pretty well. I mean, nobody knows. But there's real stuff here. It's not earth-shattering, but it's the beginning of a trend that we all need to start working towards because it is, again, not going away. But there's an interesting set of facts that people don't talk about right now. The differences in the fare. The single biggest determinant of differences in fare in the current NDC implementation from American is how far out the date of travel is. So if the date of travel is greater than 60 days, we see a tripling in the fare differences. When you get below 30 days, they're almost identical. So most business travel is under 30 days. So they're going after travel that is further out. Now, given the earlier presentations, this should not strike you as crazy. They're trying to increase their fare load, their load factors on their far out flights so they could better do revenue optimization. So this is not totally crazy. There are some reasons and some thought into why they're doing this. And if you take basic revenue optimization, airline revenue optimization theory into account, you know, it's pretty easy to understand. Now, these are just some examples here. You can see in the shuttle case, Boston to JFK, they're the same. We see no difference whatsoever. On some routes, though, when you get into more leisure routes, you can see Orlando here in a minute, not a big corporate travel destination, you'll start to see a little bit more change. But in close-in travel, you can see the differences are usually relatively small. And we have route-by-route analysis of all this. If some of you are interested, certainly reach out to World Travel and we'll get some data for you. But we look at each of these things and we're constantly tracking where we are so we can make the right decisions both on duplication, but also how to get that information to your travelers. But today, not a lot of difference. For future travel, stuff that's further out, we're seeing bigger differences. So within 160 days, you start to see some meaningful differences, especially on American routes that are high-frequency routes like the Dallas, Chicago, and LA routes. So there's some real stuff here. So again, we can give you more information on more data later. We're looking at it every day. But again, take everything I just said and don't believe a word of it. Because it's 3 weeks of information, right? And they're still changing things. And I think there is price differentials because they're trying to make a statement to the market. But eventually those price differentials are going to narrow because they are running a business. And they have to keep competitive within the GDS channel. So those are just, think about it as a big sale or a big discount. We want to take advantage of those discounts where they make sense. But it's still early in the process. So let's be data-driven and analytical. And this is not the end of the world. This is not going to change your business, your traveler experience, or your economics in the short term. And in the medium and long term, we know what we're going to do, and we will work together. But we have to cooperate. Travelers, agencies, corporate travel managers, platforms, and the airlines itself. Because the thing I get from the airlines the most is when I tell them, well, you know, you got to have one method for doing seat selection. I can't have 30. And they always say the same thing. Like, why didn't you tell me that before? Like, I don't want to get into that part. But they want to listen. And when we each go to airlines individually and say this doesn't make sense, it's not as effective as if we say, here's a standard. Here's how we need this to work. I got to get this on the screen. Help me do it. I think we can make progress. And I am very optimistic that we'll get to the right place. Now, NDC should be about competition. It should be about special offers. It should be about removing what used to be private fares where we'd go do deals and we'd make commitments and we'd have these contracts that were this thick and we didn't know what they meant. You know, the good old days, as they call it. That's going to be replaced with a data-driven personalization that will be traveler-specific. NDC allows us to pass frequent flyer information and frequent flyer numbers. It allows us to pass data back and forth that we couldn't before. So as we learn to ingest that data, we should be able to let them compete. So for a given route where the subscriber wants Delta, and this is what they think is best, Americans say, hey, in case you wanted this, I have this special offer over here that you can consider. That kind of competition in real time is, to me, exciting. So we need a new strategy for ancillaries. We need a new strategy for seats and bags. We need to be able to provide an integrated seats, because for your traveler, seat selection is one of the most important things, components, less so than things like bags. But we need to have a new strategy for how we both talk to that customer pre-booking, but allow them to come back to us, back to their corporate tool, to be able to change and modify and upgrade that particular booking seamlessly. So that really does require self-service tools. So mobile integration, I think many of you have played around with like mobile apps for travel. They're never used. In our case, 6% or so. In the case of Dean, which is a company that's now part of Travelport, 90% plus are booked via web tools or via offline, via an agent, right? And that's going to continue to be the case. But when it comes to modifies, itinerary checks, changes, seat selection, and ancillaries, you do need a mobile tool. That's where those mobile tools are critical. And be able to then integrate things like Uber or ground transportation or all the other parts of the travel experience that often fall out. Having a self-service tool is really important. And that's something that I think we have to work on, collectively, because there's been a long trail of dead when it comes to self-service tools. Getting this right is really important, because in this new world, more and more of the travel experience will move to the post-booking part. But as I always say, travel is not like other products. I always say, I've been in travel for a fairly short amount of time, for a couple of years, and when I first got here, I was always like, yeah, just make it work like the internet. It's just, why is it different than buying shoes on Amazon? The difference is because when your shoes don't come, things are fine, unless you have only no shoes. But if you're traveling and your flight gets canceled and you miss a wedding or something, that's a big deal, right? Or if you miss a meeting, or if you're stuck somewhere. These are things that, this is the traveler experience, and this is what makes our industry unique and exciting, frankly, is we have a greater responsibility than the shoe salesman. We've got to proactively figure out how to make that service experience better, and that's really the key to NDC, is that airlines feel that they bear all the cost of servicing and they don't have a partner. But I'll give you an example with Air New Zealand. Air New Zealand had a series of natural disaster issues late last year. And they did not have the machines to be able to service those issues when you have large-scale problems like weather or whatnot. So we have a role, we can help, we can work together. And the airlines want us to be able to provide that servicing. We just historically, as an industry, haven't gotten there. But here's the gauntlet I'll lay down for us and World to deliver to you, is we want the servicing through us to be better than what you would get direct. And if we can do that, we will have really revolutionized things. And I think we have that capability. We've developed a capability together with NDC to be able to do book, to be able to do modify, to be able to do involuntary changes, and be able to do exchanges and refunds quickly, as well as add the rest of the elements of a trip, whether that be car, hotel, ground transfers, entertainment, whatever it may be. So that servicing component is critical to us getting to where we need to get to, and we're really comfortable we're going to get there. So what does this all mean? As I said at the beginning, all we have to do is change search, servicing, automation, and our entire tech stack. After that, we're good. So just give us another week. So this is exciting and challenging stuff. So our search platforms, the world is getting more complicated, and it's on us to make sure that we get the right options in front of your travelers and that you have the controls to be able to determine what policies are enforced and how they're enforced. That's issue one, and we're on this. And we have a new search platform that we're introducing into the market literally in the next 30 days. Automation. We need to automate this process and make the simple functions super easy. And finally, servicing. If a traveler ever finds out that there's a difference between NDC and traditional, or that it's airline dependent, we failed. So we've got to provide a servicing infrastructure that works across all types. And there will be a day, I'll say it's the end of this year, I'm making it up, where we just stop talking about NDC. And we just we go back to talking about the traveler experience and the airlines and making fun of American like we used to, like the good old days. Instead of this thing now, because NDC will cease to be a thing, it will just be supply. And you will be in control over how that supply is consumed, how that supply is explained, and how your traveler experiences are carried out. And we want all of our travelers to be in our tool all the time, and we want them to enjoy that and make it something they don't think about or worry about ever. That's the goal. And so NDC is a good thing. It's not going away. And I guess my final message is don't panic, but also don't ignore it. Let's work together to get to a place that's better than where we were before. So that's all I have to say. Thank you very much.